It's Listen In with KNN, the sports sound of the district. Today, we welcome one of the leading voices in the fantasy sports world. He joined NBC Sports back in August as an analyst to provide his unique fantasy football and sports betting expertise. During the NFL season, he hosts a weekly game day fantasy football and sports betting show on Sundays and a daily weekday show on Peacock and across NBC Sports' digital platforms. Prior to joining NBC Sports, he spent 15 years at ESPN as the lead fantasy football expert. He is only one of 5 people to be named to the Hall of Fame for both the Fantasy Sports Trade Association and the Fantasy Sports Writers Association. To many, he is known as one of the pioneers of the fantasy sports industry. It's Matthew Berry. He joins this live stream of Listen In with KNN right now. Here's your host, Kelsey Nicole Nelson. It's Listen In with KNN, the sports sound of the district. We bring you the biggest guests, great analysis, and the hottest sports stories in the nation's capital and beyond. And we bring it to you live. Welcome to this live stream broadcast of Listen In with KNN. Here's your host, Kelsey Nicole Nelson.
All right. Hello, football fans. Happy Thursday. Welcome into a new live stream edition of Listen In with KNN, sports talk radio show and podcast presented by Fox Sports Radio 96.9 FM and 1340 AM with me, your host, Kelsey Nicole Nelson. Now, I am super excited for today's shows for 2 reasons. First, because football is back this weekend and we are that much closer to the road to the Super Bowl. And then secondly, because I have the best guest joining me to break down everything in the sports world. As you guys saw, I put up my picks last week. I went a perfect on the weekend. We'll see if I can do that again this week for my football picks, but excited today to be joined by none other than fantasy football guru. You can see him on Sunday Night Football on NBC as well as Peacock. He's also a New York Times bestselling author of Fantasy Life, founder of the Fantasy Life app. Please help me welcome, without further ado, my special guest, Matthew Berry, to the show. It's going to be a great one. Bring your questions, bring your comments, all your football related stuff. This is the time to get it in now. So without further ado, let me bring him in. Hi, Matthew. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, Kelsey. I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's our favorite time of the year, right? As football fans, as media personnel, like this is fun.
I mean, this is what we play all year for. This is what we do. What we do is for this weekend, for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's been unbelievable. We had some great games last weekend, so I'm very excited.
Yeah,
and you know what?
Great.
And the other thing is, Kelsey, because I think I got to know you a little bit because you cover my Washington Commanders. You did a great job. So I started following you because the information you provide. And what I'm excited about. Because I don't know who your actual team is. I know you covered that team for a number of teams, but what I'm excited about is not only do we have great football this weekend, but it's 5:07 on Thursday afternoon, and no new lawsuits or investigations of the Washington Commanders. We've gotten through a full day without a bump. Now we still got about an hour for before any news breaks.
I was going to say, knock on wood, Matthew. Knock on wood.
I may be pushing my luck here a little bit, but yeah. So I'm very excited about that, Kelsey.
I'm excited, and let me tell you, you just gained more fans. Not that you need any more, but you just gave more fans in DC as you talked about the Washington Commanders. And I'll tell you, it's been hard, Matthew, for these fans to watch these games because they're seeing the rest of the NFC East shine, at least for a little bit, and the Washington Commanders being the lone team in the NFC East that couldn't get the job done in the playoffs. The Browns crushing the dreams of Washington. And then we've got a lot to talk about right now in Washington, right? They keep me busy, Matt. I mean, we have the new potential owner of this team, the new potential location of this team, and then the big one, Matthew, who's going to be quarterback for this team moving forward. I would love it's good to see that you love Commanders, because usually when I talk about the Commanders, everyone sighs and like, oh my gosh, what is she going to talk about? But I'll tell Matthew, I'm actually a Ravens fan, so better believe I've been watching this Lamar Jackson news super closely. I'm a Maryland girl, so the Ravens, it's fun to kind of cover the Commanders and the Ravens, but both teams actually having big questions at the quarterback position. And since I have you on, might as well start there. So first, tell me what you like about the Commanders. Is Sam Howell going to do it for you? Do you like what Taylor Heineke has offered to this team, or do you think they need to be looking to the draft to find that guy of the future to hopefully get Washington back in the postseason?
Yeah, you know, the frustrating part is that the Commanders for the last few years have been too good to get a decent quarterback in the draft, but not good enough to make the playoffs or do anything about it. I mean, you know, look, we all love Chase Young. We're thrilled Chase Young's on the team, but the fact of the matter is they don't beat Miami the year before. Joe Burrow's our quarterback. I mean, I mean, they had the number one pick, and they blew it by beating the stupid Dolphins for whatever reason.
And could you imagine Burrow throwing to Terry McLaurin? I mean, geez, that would be amazing. I mean, a great receiver like that.
As much as we like Chase Young, we'd trade Chase Young for Joe Burrow today in a heartbeat, right? And that's disrespect to Chase Young. It's just, it's we have a very strong defensive line, period, and there are not a lot of franchise quarterbacks that have the level of skill that Joe Burrow does. So, listen, the other thing I wish that had happened this past year, and I said this is not recency bias. I literally said this on my show, I think after week 4 or week 5. I said, look, the Commanders aren't going anywhere. They should bench Wentz and play Sam Howell the rest of the way. See what they got. Yeah. And I literally said that. And what ended up happening is they went with Heineke, and they saw more of what they got out of Heineke. And listen, Taylor Heineke is, to answer your question about Heineke's a nice player. Right. And he's a fun guy to root for. He's an easy guy to root for. Taylor Heineke, I think, is somebody that you should have your kid, from an athletic standpoint, is somebody that you should have your kids look up to, because you know what? Taylor Heineke is not the best athlete. He doesn't have the biggest arm. He's not the tallest guy. But Taylor Heineke has worked his tail off to get the most out of the God-given ability he has. You just look at this past season. From a physical skill standpoint, he's nowhere close to Carson Wentz. He doesn't have Carson Wentz's arm or accuracy, but the team was better with Heineke under center than it was with Carson Wentz. It just was. And I mean, you said in the intro or earlier in the show, you said basically like, Cleveland crushing the dreams of the Commanders playoff hope. I would argue it was Carson Wentz. Because he had one job. And Ron Rivera should not have started Carson Wentz that game. That was a mistake by him, and I feel like Scott Turner got thrown under the bus for that decision. But so to answer your questions, my guess is that Sam Howell is the starting quarterback next year, and Taylor Heineke's his backup, and that they move on from Carson Wentz. There's no more guaranteed money for Wentz. I think they'll see how the draft plays out, and if there is somebody there for them, maybe they will take a shot. We'll see who they get as their offensive coordinator and what that philosophy is. Obviously, Ron's going to want to instill, I saw they just interviewed Anthony Lynn, who's obviously a run heavy. Traditionally, when he's been former NFL running back Anthony Lynn, when he's been a coordinator and a head coach, he's been fairly run heavy in his career, which would make sense given our personnel. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that Anthony Lynn's got the job, but just seeing some of the people that they've been interviewing sort of makes sense here. Quarterback's the biggest question here. I'm excited about the potential for a new owner. I think most Washington fans are.
Oh yes, believe me, that's everyone's big thing. Who is going to take control of this team? Many feeling like that top, the messiness, I'll say at the top, it's kind of why we've had all this dysfunction as a whole with this organization. And they're just saying, can this team get something going good, something going right? Maybe the one thing that kept fans happy this season, though, especially, like you said, Taylor Heineke is loved by fans. I call him a blue collar quarterback, Matthew, just because the way he plays, right? He brings it all. He wears his heart on his sleeve. And that's why you quickly heard the Heineke chants when Carson Wentz started messing up. But then the other thing, of course, was Brian Robinson. You talk about potentially bringing in an offensive coordinator who likes to run the ball. We like Brian Robinson and his tough running in Washington, and just seeing him continue to develop, especially, of course, after what happened to him here in D.C. just back in August, getting shot multiple times, then getting back on that football field, having multiple over 100-yard games. I think that just gave fans some hope, some glimmer. But then, of course, again, Carson Wentz went in. To talk about Carson Wentz, and I don't want to just down the guy. I know he's having a lot of bad news, but Matthew, let me ask you, as someone who has watched the game for a long time and knows the game, what is next for Carson Wentz? If he, wants to continue to be a starter in this National Football League, do you think there's a team out there that would take a chance on him?
Yeah, I mean, there is. There's not nearly enough quarterbacks to go around. Like, again, at one point this year, Mitchell Trubisky was the starting quarterback in the NFL.
Very true.
I mean, so this past year, I believe Sam Howell was quarterback 67 to start a game for an NFL team this year. I mean, like, there were so many injuries, there were so many, poor performances. Carson Wentz will get a job. Now, could it be a committee thing? Could it be a thing where he goes into camp? Is he going to do I think a team's paying him $28 million the way that the Commanders did this past year? No, but I don't think he's out of football. He's somebody that was in the MVP conversation at one point in his career. And I just think, I think he'll have a shot at starting, not for a good team, not for a team that really, again, it'll be a situation sort of like what was in Pittsburgh this year, where maybe a team that drafts a rookie says, let's bring in Carson Wentz as a veteran, and he comes in and probably on a 1 year prove it deal, something like that, or not a lot of money, but Carson's gonna have to do some soul searching. What does he want to do with his career? Because he could certainly go be a backup to a good quarterback, right? I just had this thought. This is sort of interesting to me, but does he go to, if I was Carson Wentz's agent, I might say something like, you know what, let's call LA and let's see if Sean McVay will take his Stafford's backup. Yeah. And let Sean McVay fix him a little bit and go to Stafford's 34. He's had some back injuries. Obviously, he missed some time this year. He's going to need a quality backup. I think Baker's going to get a starting job somewhere based on what he did with LA. Right. So I don't know. I think there might be something to that. Yeah. Right.
I like that thought. Like you said, just it's a place I think that he would have a chance to grow and hopefully again prove himself, since things obviously went wrong here in Washington. Talking about quarterbacks, going to the other side of the Beltway, the big question in Baltimore is, can Baltimore get it done with Lamar Jackson? Obviously a dynamic quarterback. Many Baltimore fans pointing to that Cincinnati Bengals game versus the Baltimore Ravens saying, hey, if that was Lamar Jackson in that game, that the Baltimore Ravens could have beat the Cincinnati Bengals in the postseason. Obviously still, though, coming close with Tyler Huntley. He did a little bit too much in that game, though, unfortunately, for the Baltimore Ravens. But all that to say, do you think things are meshed out with Baltimore and Lamar keeps himself as a Baltimore Raven?
Not at all. I mean, I don't think it's meshed out. I mean, listen, Kelsey, you cover the team. You're a fan of the team. So and I know you've got sources on that team, so you probably know better than I do. But from my point of view, it feels like things are weird there and things are bad. And now my guess is that he's back with Baltimore just because, again, there's no quarterbacks in the NFL, and that worst comes to worst, I think the Ravens franchise tag him and just say, we're going to figure it out. And you've already seen Greg Roman's moving on, and they've said Lamar will be involved in the offense coordinator discussion and process, which is sort of what the Packers did with Aaron Rodgers. So I think that's you hate to see a quarterback candidly have that much power, but I think that's the position the Ravens have put themselves in, and that's the kind of player that Lamar is. So my expectation is I think there's a chance that the blood is bad enough there that Lamar sort of forces his way out, and it's just and that there's some sort of sign and trade deal. But I think hopefully cooler heads prevail, and that ultimately something gets worked out long term, because I'm sure the Ravens obviously would like to keep him for a long, long time.
For sure. I mean, Baltimore, obviously, helping the offense with Lamar, building it around him. Though many Ravens fans would say, hey, you got to get the guy some help, especially at the wide receiver position. Mark Andrews, he's a great tight end, but he can only do so much. And especially when defenses know you're going to target him. So I think that's the big question. But it's hard for fans to believe Lamar Jackson not a Raven. Washington fans would like to have him. Derek Carr is a name I've heard fans say they wouldn't potentially mind in Baltimore. So someone who is mobile. He's not Lamar Jackson, but could possibly potentially get the job done. But only time will tell Ravens fans. Again, something to keep an eye on. I will say that Greg Roman got a lot of fans excited because many fans feeling like Baltimore's offense, it wasn't dynamic enough. They felt like, it was predictable and that this offense could do so much more. So hopefully it's a new beginnings in Baltimore. And I'll just also say the relationship with Lamar and John Harbaugh was interesting, as you said. They went from being, I think, super tight. There were times when Ravens would go for fourth down. You'd see Lamar look to the sideline at John Harbaugh, and John Harbaugh give him that look. And, he would trust his quarterback on, some of those fourth downs were kind of like, wow, are you really doing this? But then all of a sudden, we just see Lamar just kind of obviously really expressing himself on social media, like the young kids do, Matthew. And, we're just seeing things look murky. So, who knows what will happen with Baltimore. But that quarterback position is going to be very important, especially after they already got, Roquan Smith his money.
Yeah, look, I think this is going to be a fascinating offseason as it was last year for quarterbacks. Yeah. Think about last year, there was a lot of will he or won't we with Aaron Rodgers, the Russell Wilson trade, smaller potatoes, but Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan to Indianapolis. There was a lot of shuffling. Where would Trubisky sign? Trubisky actually, believe it or not, a year ago had some heat after being the backup for Josh Allen. So there was, I think you'll see some other, Lamar being kind of the biggest domino, but you're already hearing Aaron Rodgers could easily get traded as well. So once again, there'll be drama around Aaron Rodgers. I don't think we're out of the woods yet on Matthew Stafford. I do think there's still a chance he could retire. Maybe he'll come back. That's certainly something that's been, discussed as a possibility. Stafford says he's playing next year, but until we see it, we'll see. There's obviously concerns about Tua Tagovailoa's long-term health, given the season he just went through. So there's
questions.
There's a number of questions. Daniel Jones is going to be a free agent too. He improved his stock this postseason and the season, but both. And they didn't pick up his fifth-year option, so he's out there. We know you mentioned Kelsey. You mentioned Derek Carr. He's going to be out there. So just speculation that Tom Brady might want to go join his former offense coordinator Josh McDaniels in Vegas. So where does Brady wind up? Does he come back to Tampa Bay? Does he go somewhere else? Does he retire? So it will. It's never boring.
It's never boring at all. This is why we do our jobs, Matthew. They keep us fun and they keep us busy, obviously, like you said, in this year, so many quarterbacks to follow. And as we're talking about quarterbacks, we might as well talk about the hot topic today, the Jets hiring former Broncos coach Nathaniel Hackett as their offensive coordinator. And many saying if the Jets are somehow, some way able to land Aaron Rodgers, Matthew, some people are saying this team could potentially go to the Super Bowl, something that we don't always get to talk about with the New York Jets. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, certainly any team that adds Aaron Rodgers has that ability. You saw, look, the Jets ultimately fell short of their goal this year, but the Jets were a lot better this year than I think anyone expected them to be, right? And so it's a good young defense. They'll hopefully have Breece Hall back next year. They were able to run the ball effectively this year. Garrett Wilson's an emerging star. I think getting somebody like Aaron Rodgers would unleash Elijah Moore. They still have Corey Davis there. They got some good snaps from Tyler Conklin this season. They'll be able to draft in the middle of the pack as well. And so and it's a good core. It makes sense. Like Aaron Rodgers should go to a team that's a quarterback away from making a Super Bowl run. And I think you could argue that the Jets are a quarterback away from making a Super Bowl run. They went out there and they almost made the playoffs with Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson, and draft pick Mike White.
Yeah, and we saw the quarterback controversy obviously there too. But like you said, they were that close. This is the happiest match I've seen Jets fans in a while. It was fun to see. Yeah. And like you said, I think, that quarterback position is going to be crucial for them. But again, they made hopefully the first piece of hiring Nathaniel Hackett, and we'll see how good their offense gets with whoever's at the helm. The other big news today, Matthew, of course, we got to talk about the Carolina Panthers now naming Frank Reich their new head coach. Of course, former Colts head coach. It's perfect timing that you joined the show because we had Nate Turner here as a special guest last week. He actually played with Frank in Carolina. But what do you think about this news of many saying, hey, well, what about Steve Wilkes? And he did a pretty decent job, I think most folks would say. But did you feel like this was the right move for Carolina moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you. I think Wilkes should have gotten a long look because I thought it was really impressive what he did, given what he sort of inherited.
What he had.
It was really tough to turn around a team around midseason, and he did that. So, not really sure why he didn't get the job. I will say, of all the potential candidates out there, Frank Reich is kind of the safest choice. I know people will look at, well, Indianapolis was not great this year, but you're also like, okay, well, look at their offensive line, look at the injuries they had, look at Matt Ryan. And look at what that team did once they got rid of Frank Reich. I mean, when Frank Reich was fired, they were, I believe, 3-3-1. Like they had disappointed from preseason expectations, but they weren't out of it by any stretch of the match.
Right.
They were competitive in every game. They were right there, right at 3-3-1.
Right.
They obviously had a real shot at winning that division. Jeff Saturday comes in, and somehow, Jeff Saturday manages to lose to a, Jeff Saturday just manages to lose to almost everybody.
Literally. He had the first win, the first game he won, right? And then after that,
beat the Raiders.
Series of unfortunate events, right?
Yeah, I mean, they beat the Raiders, but then just, they and so I don't know. We'll see if Saturday gets the full-time job and what ends up happening there. But I think most people in the NFL know that Frank Reich is obviously a very good coordinator. And I think the jury is still out as to what kind of head coach he can be. But I think there's for lack of a better way to describe it, there's a floor of Frank Reich. We don't know about the upside yet, but there's certainly a floor. Like
for him,
Panthers will be competent next year. The Panthers will be competent next year for sure.
Great news for folks in North Carolina. And of course, Matthew, we got to talk about the games this weekend. First, let's start with the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. I guess you could say the Cincinnati Bengals have been giving the Chiefs bulletin board material, going to Burrowhead. Eli Apple having the time of his life, Matthew, on Twitter. I think everything is leading up to this game. We're all watching Patrick Mahomes and his high ankle sprain. Give me your thoughts on this matchup and who you have coming out as the champion.
I have the Chiefs winning a close one at home. I think Mahomes is probably going to be about 80-85%. You've seen the video of him walking without a limp, of him, coming out of the press conference and walking without a limp with a practice video. And it's so funny. We always study the betting on my show. We have a sponsorship with BetMGM, and the line moved from -1.5 Cincinnati to the Chiefs -1. So just the fact that there's 10-second video of Patrick Mahomes walking without a limp moved the line 2.5 points.
It gave people hope.
It's just sort of unbelievable. Right, but that's the world we live in. Look, I get it. The Bengals are red hot. Bengals have won 3 straight against the Chiefs, but every one of those games was a 3-point game, came down to the fourth quarter. Ultimately, I think this game comes down to, can the Chiefs get to Joe Burrow, right? Because Burrow's offensive line has been obviously decimated, but playing in the snow last week sort of mitigated that. They also put him in shotgun a lot. He got the ball out really quickly. They didn't try to do a lot of deep stuff. Ultimately, I think it's a really close one, but I think the Chiefs are the slightly better team. And so I have the Chiefs moving on, but that's a close one. It's a coin flip, and I would not be surprised if the Bengals make it back to the Super Bowl.
Yes, I think I'm looking forward to that one as well. Like I said, I think it's going to be a battle. I'm looking forward to both quarterbacks. Defensive play, I think, will be huge in this game. What team can potentially get the turnover? But I'm like you. I have a slight edge still to the Chiefs. I had to watch Patrick's ankle because him being able to be mobile in the pocket and move, I do think is going to be important. But I think, like you said, that video, I think gave some people just a little bit of hope. But Matthew, I want to get your thoughts too. We saw Patrick Mahomes the last game go back on that football field after obviously being in pain, right? On that ankle, some questioning like, why is he going back in the game? Don't do it. Don't hurt yourself more. What were your thoughts as you watch Patrick Mahomes struggle, putting weight on that leg, but still wanting to obviously be there for his team and carry them to a victory?
I thought it was really impressive, obviously. Like, you saw that injury and you're like, oh, well, he's done. You thought, well, maybe he's done for the year. And the fact that he was able to come back out and lead his team to victory was really impressive. Was he 100% Patrick Mahomes? No, but like whatever, 75%. 60%, 50% of Patrick Mahomes is
still amazing.
It's still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And so, it was incredibly impressive. I was actually at the game. I was live there in Arrowhead. We broadcast the game on NBC. And so the roar of the crowd when he walked back out on the field was deafening.
It was huge, I'm sure. I mean, like you said, Patrick Mahomes, I say he who is Patrick Mahomes. Because like you said, what can he not do? He gives the fans every ounce of hope. And him being there had to motivate his teammates and the guys, again, giving his all for that team. And, as we talk about quarterback play, the other game, of course, everyone excited to watch Philadelphia Eagles taking on the San Francisco 49ers. I think, Brock Purdy has made people believe a rookie, more because the way he's playing. I mean, it's been fun to watch. But on the other end of things, I think Jalen Hurts, being an underdog for so long and finally getting his shine with this Eagles team. What are you thinking in this one? And sorry, Cowboys fans, again, I know you guys are hurting right now. They're hurting, Matthew. I saw you post that video of the broken TVs. I'll never understand that for the life of me. But to each TV,
don't feel bad for Cowboys fans. No, don't. They deserve it. Please, why are you rooting for the Cowboys?
Sorry, Cowboys fans. No love here. But what are you thinking about this?
I mean, listen. I root for the Commanders. I pity no one.
There we go.
No one's got a worse team to root for than me. So I think the Eagles win this game. I think the Super Bowl is the Andy Reid Bowl, right? I think it's Chiefs Eagles in the Super Bowl.
Brothers.
Brock Purdy has been an incredible story, and I posted this on Twitter, and people were arguing with me. I'm like, you guys are nuts. Like, Kyle Shanahan, like, he was Mr. Irrelevant. I had one guy that one of my co-hosts is Connor Rogers, who for 7 years was the draft expert for Bleacher Report, and he said when Brock Purdy was drafted, as Mr. Irrelevant, the last round of the NFL draft, Brock Purdy being drafted as Mr. Irrelevant, and Connor said, I thought he was overdrafted. I thought that was too high for him. I mean, like, this was not somebody that was on a lot of people's radar as a pro ready prospect. And the fact that Kyle Shanahan, and he's the 7th round, he's the 3rd string quarterback. The fact that Kyle Shanahan has won now, I think 7 straight games, including the playoffs, with Brock Purdy as his quarterback. Incredible. It's an amazing story. Kyle Shanahan should be coach of the year. Nick Sirianni, who's done a great job. He did. Nick Sirianni, who has done a great job. But you think about this: once Jalen Hurts went out and he had Gardner Minshew, who has been a starting quarterback in the NFL, he went 0-2 with Gardner Minshew.
Right. It was different teams.
And went 7-0 with Brock Purdy, 6-0 during the regular season. And don't give me the argument of like, the 49ers have so many weapons. So do the Eagles. The Eagles have a good offensive line. The Eagles have
loaded.
Goddard and A.J. Brown and a good running game. And I want to hear a great defense. Like,
they're loaded. They have everything.
0-2 with Minshew. Shanahan went 6-0 with Brock Purdy. So having said all that, Kelsey, I think the Eagles win this game. As I said, one of the issues, if you look at last week's game against Dallas, when Brock Purdy was under pressure, he was 3 of 11 for less than 50 yards.
Struggled some,
sacks, just really struggled when he's under pressure. When he has a clean pocket, he's been really good so far this stretch.
Right.
But when he's pressured, he plays like a 7th round rookie. Well, on the other side of the ball is a Philadelphia Eagles team that had 75 sacks this year.
Ooh,
like they bring the pressure in such a significant way. They're fully healthy as well. I think Sirianni saw this. He knows this. He's not a moron. He's going to be like, we got to bring pressure we got to really bring pressure to Brock Purdy. And they're a team that's built because of the success of Darius Slay and James Bradbury in the secondary. They can put those guys on single coverage. They'll say, like, you know what, we'll play man, and we're going to send the house to go get you guys. And look, the Niners have a good defense as well. I think it's going to be a hard-fought battle, but give me the Eagles, and give me the Eagles favored by 2.5. I think they win, and I think they cover.
Nice. I was going to ask you if you thought they'd win big, but I appreciate you giving that. Like, all the betting folks, look, this is why I got Matthew Berry on the show for you all. And again, I think this is going to be a game. I think, like you said, I think Brock Purdy has a perfect story, right? It's a dream. You go from last and everyone's praising your name. We love that in sports. We love to root for the underdogs, but at the end of the day, he's going to be pressured, like you said, and he's going on the road. I think, again, those rookie mistakes, that inexperience will show up. And I feel like Philly just has been a team of destiny right now. They're playing like it. They want this. And what Nick Sirianni has done, as you said, I mean, you have to give him his props. But Jalen Hurts too, again. I think he wants respect in this league. And think about what getting to the Super Bowl would do for his career, especially if they're able to go on and win. Though you might not be able to stand your Philadelphia Eagles fan, folks, your friends, folks, because we know how fly Eagles fly can get. But again, if they get there and do the job, you have to root for what they did this year. But something interesting, Matthew, the Commanders being the first team, right, to beat Philadelphia this season. And I think there's something you could potentially learn from that playbook. Before I let you go, Matthew, because I know you're a busy, busy man, I have to ask you, how does a man from Texas, College Station, Texas, become a fan of Washington? I got to hear this story.
Listen, I grew up I moved to Texas when I was 12. So up until the time I was 12, I lived in Charlottesville, Virginia. My father was a professor at University of Virginia at UVA. And so, I'm obviously older. And so at that time, when I was a young kid growing up in Charlottesville, that was the Joe Gibbs era. That was
you were here for the glory days.
And, Art Monk and Darryl Green and John Riggins and, the whole crew. And so, Joe Theismann, Doug Williams, Mark Rippon, just ever since. So that's what it is. It's like before I was, up until the time I was 12, I hadn't discovered girls yet. I was only interested in football and sports.
Only football.
Right. Only football. And so, so I fell in love with the pro Washington team there. And so it's been, and anything that happened when you're a kid, like it's in your blood,
Right.
And so I've literally, since I was 5 years old, I've been a Washington fan.
Love it. And I love that you didn't turn. Some people left the team because of all the stuff that happened. Some not liking the name and the name change, but you're still here riding. So we got a real one.
Get it out of my blood. If I could leave, I would, but I can't. It's in my blood. I will be a Washington fan till the day I die.
I love that. And Matthew, I'd ask, are you a fan of the name as Commanders? Has it stuck with you yet?
I'll tell you a funny story. I don't love the name, but I also don't hate the name.
Right.
Actually, Washington football team grew on me. I kind of would have.
I like that too. I like that too.
Like this sort of classic old school Washington football team.
Right.
When they said they were going to change, but they hadn't announced the Commanders yet, I thought, I liked Red Wolves. I liked Red Hogs. Red Tails had been fine with. I liked anything with red in it to, hail to the red Hogs, hail to the Red Wolves.
Be a fun fight.
But my opinion on this changed twofold. Number one is, so I was at I don't know if you remember this, but they announced the name change to Commanders.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe a week before the Super Bowl last year, something like that.
Right.
So I'm still working for ESPN at the time, and I went to the ESPN Super Bowl party. ESPN has a tailgate before the game.
Right.
And at the tailgate is Joe Theismann, who's done a bunch of work for ESPN over the years. And so I see Joe, and I've met Joe over the years, and he knows I'm a huge Washington fan. And so as I walk up to him, Joe sticks out his hand and he's like, "Matthew, how we doing?" And so I immediately say to him and say, "Joe, Commanders, what do we think?" And I'll never forget this. He turns to me, he says, "Hey, we're not the Pelicans." And I'm like,
that's fair.
You know what? And I laughed, and I'm like, "You're right. It could be worse. We could be the Pelicans. We could be the Guardians. That's true. The Commanders is fine, Kelsey." And I later did a podcast that day where I got asked this question: "What do I think of Commanders?" And I'm like, it's sort of weird, and I don't love it, but I don't hate it. But here's what I'll tell you.
Okay.
Think about the very first day. Somebody said eBay. You're like, what's eBay?
True.
Wait, you want to name your online trading company eBay? What does that mean?
That's
what
fair.
does Xerox mean? Hey, Steve Jobs, wait a minute. I'm sorry.
Right.
You want to build a tech company and name it after a fruit?
Right.
Names are weird until they're not. And
I think grow on you.
The biggest thing that would solve the Commanders issue is if they just won.
Yes,
right?
Winning solves a lot.
Winning solves a lot.
What we need. That's what we need. Matthew Berry, it's been a joy to have you. Really quickly, one quick fan question, because I also thought this was cool. How cool was it to do in-game? Asked from Peter H. Blake.
Yeah, it was one of the top 5 experiences of my life. Other than the day my kids were born and the day I got married.
Close second. Close third.
The best non-kid, non-wife experience I've had in my life. It was amazing. And I always say, people are like, "Oh, is that a bucket list thing for you?" I'm like, no, because who puts on their bucket list? Like bucket lists are like, I want to climb a mountain,
right? The adventurous stuff,
like,
right?
Yeah, I want to be in the biggest movie of all time. I want to be in an Avengers movie. Like,
right.
It's insane. So it was so cool, and people still come up to me every day about it or mention it online, and I love it. And it was an amazing experience on the set. Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, Tom Hiddleston, who plays Loki, the Russo brothers who directed it, all so incredibly kind and gracious to me. Like, I showed up there thinking, hey, I'm the fantasy guy. Are they going to be like, look? And they were all like, they couldn't have. Thanks for doing this.
Just welcoming you. Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
And it was incredible. And then obviously the audience reaction to it, and just people. I got so many positive. That's cool. That's my fantasy guy up there, and that's so cool to see you. And since that movie, I've played in fantasy leagues with all those guys. I've become friends with a lot of the guys that are in that movie. I text with a decent amount of them, and so literally the best non-wife, non-kid experience of my life.
Love that. And if you guys, again, we all love Endgame. Might have been watching tonight now, Matthew. You just got it in my head now. So fun thing to do.
An hour and a half in.
There we go. Matthew Berry, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure to meet you, and we are looking forward to your continued football coverage.
Thank you, Kelsey. Appreciate you.
Thanks so much. Have a great one. Bye, Matthew. All right, everyone. A special thanks to you all for tuning in, and a very special thanks to Matthew Berry for joining me live on this show. We'll be back next week after the games. Put your picks in the comments. I want to hear. Don't change your picks. After all, I'll give you guys mine live on the show, so you can't say I changed. I also have, and I've had this since the beginning. I had Chiefs and Eagles in the Super Bowl. That was my initial pick. So I'm glad to see both teams are still alive, and I am keeping with that. But all right, you guys, thanks so much again. Also look out soon for our audio show that we'll be dropping with a very special guest. We're going to Formula One for that show. And a special thanks, as always, to my entire team for helping put this together. And once again, a special thanks to you all for tuning in. Hope you have a great Thursday. Enjoy it, the sports world. And as well, look forward to the football games this weekend. Have a great one. Bye, guys.
Follow Kelsey on social media at @TheRealKNelson. Catch episodes of Listen In with KNN on YouTube, on air at AM 1340 and 96.9 FM Fox Sports Radio, on Facebook and Twitter, and online at KelseyNicoleNelson.com. Thank you for watching this live stream broadcast of Listen In with KNN.
Listen In with KNN on Fox Sports Radio now offers official Kelsey Nicole Nelson apparel in a variety of styles for men and women. Fashionable shirts, leggings, hats, jackets, and more. Order now and get 15% off and free shipping. Just enter promo code KNN. Get your Listen In with KNN wearables today. And check out Listen In with KNN on Fox Sports Radio with Kelsey Nicole Nelson.